An ancient Chinese proverb once said, "The palest ink is better than the best memory." After 35, something begins to happen that most people do not speak about. It is not dramatic, it is not loud, it does not arrive like an illness. It arrives like a small crack in a cup you have used for years. You walk into a room and forget why you came. You reach for a word you have spoken 1,000 times, and it is suddenly not there. Someone introduces themselves, and their name falls through your mind like water through loose fingers. At first, you laugh. You tell yourself you are tired. You tell yourself you are busy. You tell yourself it is normal. But later, when no one is watching, you feel something colder beneath the surface. A quiet fear, not the fear of forgetting a name, but the fear of becoming the kind of person who forgets. And because you are not young anymore, this fear does not feel like imagination. It feels like evidence. This was exactly how it began for a man named Liang Wen. He was 38 years old, a records official in the provincial capital, a man whose entire value came from one thing, a steady mind. For 15 years, his memory had been his weapon. He did not carry a sword, he carried precision. And then one morning, in early autumn, he reached for a memory that had always been there and found only emptiness. It was not a collapse, it was not a breakdown, it was a single missing thread. And in the mind of a capable adult, one missing thread is never just one. Because when your identity is built on sharpness, even a small fracture feels like the beginning of disappearance. So Liang Wen did what most adults do when they sense decline. He fought it. He read more. He worked harder. He forced focus. He tried to train his mind like a muscle. And strangely, the harder he tried, the more scattered he became. His mind began to feel like a room filled with papers. Too many notes, too many tasks, too many unfinished thoughts. He was not empty. He was full. And yet, he could not hold what mattered. This is where most people misunderstand the problem. They believe memory is a tool. They believe memory is something you strengthen. They believe forgetting is proof of decline. But in the old teachings of cultivation, memory was never treated like a muscle. It was treated like a mirror. A mirror does not become clearer by being scrubbed harder. A mirror becomes clearer when the dust is removed. And after 35, most people do not suffer from weak memory. They suffer from a mind that is no longer aligned, a mind split in too many directions, a mind constantly pulled away from the present, a mind living in 10 places at once. In the next part, I will tell you how Liang Wen's memory began to fail and how that failure became the beginning of his real cultivation. Liang Wen was not a foolish man. In the provincial capital, he was known as one of the sharpest minds of his generation. He was 38 years old enough to be trusted, young enough to still be expected to rise. He served as a records official, one of those quiet positions that carried no glory, yet demanded something most men did not possess, a steady mind. His work was not merely writing, it was remembering names of families, land disputes, tax ledgers, lineages, the subtle difference between two villages that shared the same surname. For 15 years, Liang Wen's memory had been his weapon. Others carried blades. He carried precision. He could read a document once and recall it weeks later. He could hear a man speak for 5 minutes and sense what was missing. He was not famous, but he was relied upon. And in the world of officials, being relied upon was a form of power. Then, one morning in early autumn, something small happened. A junior clerk entered with a bundle of papers. "Sir," the clerk said, bowing, "these are the dispute records from the Liu family in East River Village." Liang Wen reached for the documents. He nodded, and then he paused, because the words East River Village did not summon anything. No image, no memory, no familiar weight in the mind. He stared at the paper, waiting for recognition to rise like it always did. Nothing came. The clerk stood patiently. Liang Wen forced a small smile. "Of course," he said, "set them there." The clerk left. Liang Wen sat alone, staring at the documents. He knew this village. He had handled disputes from that region more than once. He should have been able to recall the family head, the history, the details. But his mind was empty where it should have been full. He told himself what any capable adult tells himself. I did not sleep well. My mind is occupied. I have been working too long. And he continued his day. But that afternoon, the second fracture arrived. A senior official stopped him in the corridor. Liang Wen, the man said warmly, your summary of the Chen case was excellent. What was the name of the second witness again? Liang Wen opened his mouth. The name was common. He had read it dozens of times. It should have been immediate. But once again, nothing. He felt heat rise in his face. The official waited. Liang Wen nodded calmly, as if the delay meant nothing. I will confirm it in the record, he said. The official nodded and walked on. But Liang Wen stood frozen, because now it was not one incident, it was two. And in the mind of a man who has built his life on reliability, two fractures are not small. They are a warning. That night, Liang Wen returned home and ate in silence. His wife spoke of household matters. His son spoke of studies. Liang Wen responded at the right moments, but inside, he was no longer listening. His mind was circling one thought: is my memory leaving me? When the house slept, he lit an oil lamp and opened a book, not to learn, to test himself. He read a page, closed it, tried to repeat it. His recall was weaker than it should have been, so he read another page, then another. His eyes grew dry. His chest grew tight. He felt the strange humiliation of watching his own strength slip away, not in the body, in the mind. And the worst part was this: no one else could see it. To the world, Liang Wen was still capable, still respected, still functioning. But he could feel the erosion beginning. And before dawn, one thought formed in him like a quiet terror. If I lose my memory, I lose myself. As the sky lightened, he made a decision. He would not slow down. He would not rest. He would not simplify. He would do what he had always done. He would try harder. And that was where his suffering truly began. When a capable man senses weakness, he does not respond with softness. He responds with force. Liang Wen did not tell anyone what was happening. Not his wife, not his colleagues, not even his closest friend. Because forgetting is not seen as a small thing in the world of officials. A man may lose wealth and recover. A man may lose status and rebuild. But if a man loses his mind, he becomes invisible. So Liang Wen treated his memory like a failing blade. And he did what men always do with a blade they fear is dull. He sharpened it harder. He woke earlier. He read longer. He copied passages by hand until his fingers cramped. He forced himself to memorize names, dates, and cases the way soldiers memorize formations. At first, it seemed to work. For a few days, he felt sharper. He felt relief. He felt control returning. Then it became worse. The harder he pushed, the more restless his mind became. He would read the same line 3 times without absorbing it. He would begin writing a report and suddenly forget what he intended to say. He would wake in the night with his thoughts racing, reviewing the day, anticipating tomorrow, fearing the moment when someone would notice. And slowly, a deeper problem emerged beneath the forgetting. His mind became crowded, not with wisdom, with noise. The more he tried to hold, the more his mind felt like a room filled with people shouting at once. He would recall one name, then lose another. He would remember a case, then forget a simple word. He began to carry his work like a man carrying water in a cracked vessel. No matter how much he poured in, it leaked out, and this created the most dangerous feeling an adult can experience, a quiet panic that cannot be spoken. So Liang Wen did not collapse. He tightened. He became harsher with himself, and each day, the mind grew more strained. One evening, alone in the records hall, he stared at a stack of documents and realized something terrifying. He could not clearly remember what he had done the day before. Not the sequence, not the details, only fragments. In that moment, fear deepened into grief. because he did not feel he was losing information. He felt he was losing the man he used to be. And finally, he admitted the truth he had been avoiding. Trying harder was not saving him. Trying harder was breaking him. So he did the only thing left. He left the city, and he went into the mountains. 3 days from the provincial capital, the roads narrowed, stone paths replaced dirt, markets disappeared, the air grew colder and cleaner. Liang Wen traveled alone, wearing plain robes, carrying only a small satchel and a mind full of quiet shame. He told himself he was going to rest, but he knew the truth. He was going to hide, because in the city, his forgetting had begun to feel like exposure. Every conversation carried danger. Every question felt like a test. Every moment demanded performance. In the mountains, at least, no one would ask him for names. On the fourth morning, he reached a small settlement near a mountain pass. It was not a town, only a cluster of homes and a tea hut. He stepped inside to warm his hands. Near the window sat an old man, not a monk, not an official. His clothing was clean but worn. His posture was still, as if his bones belonged to the mountain. Liang Wen did not know why, but the tea hut felt quieter around him. The owner poured Liang Wen tea, then nodded toward the old man. "If you are sick," she said softly, "that one is the physician." Liang Wen almost smiled. He did not feel sick. His body was strong. His appetite was normal, only his mind. Still, he approached and bowed. "Honored elder," Liang Wen said, "may I ask for a moment of your time?" The old man looked up. His eyes were clear, not sharp, clear like water that has settled. "You may sit," the old man said. Liang Wen sat. For a long moment, the old man said nothing. He simply watched Liang Wen, not his face, his breathing, his shoulders, the tension held in his jaw. Then the old man spoke. "You have come because you believe your memory is failing." Liang Wen's chest tightened. He had not said that. The old man continued calmly. "You are not old enough for true decline." Liang Wen swallowed. "Then why?" he began. The old man lifted a hand. "Before you ask why, answer this." He poured tea into 2 cups. "When you drink, do you taste the tea?" Liang Wen blinked. "I drink it," he said. "And when you walk," the old man asked, "do you feel your feet?" Liang Wen hesitated. "I suppose." The old man nodded once, then asked the question that cut deepest. "And when you speak to your family, are you there?" Liang Wen's throat tightened because he suddenly realized he could not answer honestly. He drank tea while thinking of work. He walked while rehearsing tomorrow. He spoke to his wife while reviewing disputes in his mind. Even when he read, he was not fully reading. He was rushing, collecting, forcing. The old man watched him and said, almost gently, "Your memory is not weak." Liang Wen's eyes widened. "Then what is wrong with me?" he whispered. The old man leaned forward slightly. "Your mind is scattered." Liang Wen felt resistance rise. Scattered? He was disciplined. He was educated. He was not like the careless men who wasted their days. But as soon as the resistance appeared, he felt its truth. The old man continued. After 35, most men begin to live in pieces. One part of the mind stays in the past. One part runs toward the future. One part performs for others. And one part is exhausted from holding all of it. He lifted the teacup. When the cup is shaking, the tea cannot settle. Liang Wen stared at him. The old man's voice remained calm. "You think you have a memory problem, but you have an attention problem. And attention is not restored by force." Liang Wen felt his eyes sting. The physician's words removed blame. And when blame is removed, truth finally enters. Liang Wen whispered, "Can it be repaired?" The old man sipped his tea. Then he said, "It can be returned." Liang Wen stared at the old physician as if he had been given a new body. Returned. The word felt strange, because Liang Wen had not come to the mountains seeking a return. He had come seeking improvement, a sharper mind, a stronger memory, a solution. The physician set his cup down. "You believe memory is something you build," he said. Liang Wen nodded. Is it not? The old man smiled faintly. When a jar is cracked, he said, does it need more water? Liang Wen did not answer. Or does it need to stop leaking? Silence. The physician leaned back. Memory is not created by force. It is held by stillness. Liang Wen frowned. Stillness? He had heard of stillness in meditation halls, spoken by monks who lived far from duty. But Liang Wen was an official, a husband, a father. He did not have the luxury of becoming empty. The physician seemed to hear the objection before it formed. You misunderstand, he said. Stillness is not doing nothing. Stillness is the mind no longer being pulled in 10 directions while the body remains in one place. He lifted one finger. There is a law. Liang Wen listened. When the mind is scattered, it cannot hold. When the mind is scattered, it leaks, not because it is weak, because it is divided. The physician's voice remained calm, almost indifferent. And after 35, division becomes the natural illness of adults. Liang Wen felt resistance rise at the word illness. He had survived examinations, politics, long nights, and years of labor. He was not ill. But again, resistance rose, and truth followed behind it. The physician continued, before 35, a man can live scattered and still feel strong. He can sleep poorly and recover. He can chase too many things and still remember. He can live in noise and still think clearly. But after 35, the cost arrives. Liang Wen swallowed. The physician's eyes stayed steady. Because the mind is like a pond. When the pond is still, it reflects the moon. When the pond is disturbed, the moon breaks into fragments. He tapped the table gently. The moon did not disappear. It only lost its reflection. Liang Wen felt the metaphor strike him with strange relief. So the memory was not gone. It was disturbed. The physician leaned forward. Tell me, he said, when you forget a name, where is your mind? Liang Wen opened his mouth, then closed it, because the answer was painful. His mind was not with the person. His mind was with his fear, with what forgetting meant, with the future consequence, with the shame. The physician nodded. And when you read, he asked, where is your mind? Liang Wen's shoulders dropped. Rushing, he admitted. The physician nodded again. You do not read to absorb. You read to finish. And when you speak to your family, Liang Wen looked away. The physician did not push. He simply said, you are always somewhere else. Liang Wen felt a bitter taste rise in him, not anger, recognition, because the physician was not describing his memory. He was describing his life. Liang Wen whispered, so the problem is not that I am forgetting. The physician's voice softened. The problem, he said, is that you are not here. He lifted his teacup again. When a man is not here, he cannot remember what he touched. He cannot remember what he saw. He cannot remember what he heard, because he was never fully present when it happened. Liang Wen sat in silence, and suddenly a memory returned. His childhood by a river, watching a dragonfly land on a reed. He could recall every detail, the sunlight, the sound of water, the shimmer of wings. Why? Because in that moment he had been entirely there. The physician watched him. Then he said, memory does not fail first. Presence fails first, and memory simply follows. Liang Wen's hands tightened around the warm cup. If what the physician said was true, then Liang Wen's effort had been aimed in the wrong direction. He had been trying to build memory the way a man builds a wall, adding stones, adding weight, adding more. But the physician was describing something different, not construction, return. Liang Wen asked the question that had been sitting in his chest since the first fracture. Then what should I do? The old physician did not answer quickly. He stood and walked to the corner of the tea hut, where a clay jar sat beside the stove. The jar was filled with cloudy water. He lifted a ladle and poured it into a bowl. The water looked dull, full of sediment. Then he set the bowl down and waited. At first, nothing changed. Then slowly, the sediment sank. The water cleared. The physician pointed. "I did not add anything," he said. "I removed the disturbance." Liang Wen stared. The physician returned to his seat. "After 35, he said, most men try to fix memory by adding more books, more notes, more training, more forcing. And they do not realize they are pouring more into already turbid water." Liang Wen felt his throat tighten because he had done all of it. "The method is not addition," the physician said. "It is removal." Liang Wen asked quietly, "Removal of what?" The physician looked out the window. "Removal of what scatters you." Then he turned back. "It is not only work that scatters you. It is the way you carry work. It is not only a responsibility. It is the way you hold responsibility with fear. It is not only time. It is the way you live as if time is hunting you." Liang Wen listened, breath shallow. "Your memory is not failing because you are old," the physician said. "It is failing because your mind is never allowed to settle." He lifted one finger. "So the method begins with one thing, one thread." Liang Wen frowned. "One thread?" The physician nodded. "For 7 days, you will do one thing at a time." Liang Wen almost smiled. "That is all?" The physician's eyes remained still. "You think this is small because you do not understand how divided you are." He continued, "When you eat, you will eat. No reading, no planning, no rehearsing tomorrow. When you walk, you will walk. No reviewing yesterday, no reliving conversations. When you read, you will read. And you will stop when the mind becomes dull, not when the page ends." Liang Wen felt resistance rise. He was trained to endure, to push through, to finish. The physician watched him. "Yes," he said softly, "your identity is built on finishing. But finishing is not the same as absorbing." Then the physician gave the deeper instruction. "For 7 days, he said, you will stop collecting." Liang Wen blinked. "Stop collecting?" The physician nodded. "No new books, no new scrolls, no new teachings, no new methods." Liang Wen felt panic flash. "If I stop collecting, I will fall behind." The physician spoke as if reading his mind. "You cannot fall behind yourself." Liang Wen froze. The physician continued, "You believe your life is a race, so you keep running, and now your mind is exhausted from running. Memory returns when the running stops." The physician poured more tea. "Most men after 35 do not need more discipline," he said. "They need less noise. They do not need more pressure. They need more rhythm." He set the cup down. "For 7 days, he said, live like a man who is no longer hunted." Liang Wen swallowed. "And after 7 days?" he asked. The physician's voice remained calm. "After 7 days, he said, you will discover whether your memory was ever the problem." Liang Wen stayed one night in the mountain settlement. The next morning, he began the physician's method. No new books, no new notes, no forcing, only one thread. At first, it felt insulting. He had traveled into the mountains expecting rare medicine, secret techniques, and hidden scrolls. And the physician had given him something that sounded like common sense. Eat when eating, walk when walking, read when reading. So Liang Wen began with breakfast, a simple bowl of rice, salted vegetables, and tea. He sat alone. He lifted the chopsticks, and immediately his mind ran. What if this does not work? What if my decline is real? What if I return to the capital and fail publicly? What if my wife sees me weakening? His hand tightened. His breathing shortened. He realized something humiliating. He could not even eat a bowl of rice without anxiety. So he tried again. He placed the chopsticks down. He took one breath. He watched the steam rise. He tasted one mouthful slowly. For a few seconds, the mind quieted. Then it fled again. This was the first resistance, not laziness, withdrawal. His mind had been fed noise for so long that stillness felt like starvation. That day, Liang Wen walked along a mountain path. The physician had said, "When you walk, you will walk." So Liang Wen walked, and after 10 steps, his mind began reviewing the capital. Unfinished work, names he feared forgetting. The senior official's face when Liang Wen hesitated. His mind pulled him backward like a hook. Liang Wen stopped. He felt the ground beneath his feet. He listened to the wind in the pines. He took one step again, and again. The mind fled. It was like trying to hold water in bare hands. By the third day, frustration rose. Not frustration of weakness, frustration of discovery. Liang Wen realized he had never been in control of his mind. He had only been busy enough to avoid noticing. Now that he was not collecting, not distracting himself with constant effort, he could see the truth. His mind was restless, hungry, always seeking the next thing. Even in the mountains, it wanted stimulation. It wanted reassurance. It wanted progress. And when it did not receive these, it became louder. On the fourth night, Liang Wen sat in his room with no book in his hands. This alone felt unbearable. He stared at the wall. He heard the small sounds outside. And suddenly, a wave of fear rose so strongly he felt it in his chest. Not fear of forgetting, fear of stillness, because stillness revealed what noise had been hiding, how tired he was, how long he had been living without peace, how much of his life had been spent running. Liang Wen whispered, "This is pointless." But then another thought followed, quieter, sharper. "This is not pointless. This is the first time you are seeing yourself." And that was the second resistance. Not the mind rebelling against memory training, the mind rebelling against truth. On the fifth morning, Liang Wen woke before sunrise. He expected the same restlessness, the same hunger for noise, but something had shifted. Not like a sudden awakening, more like a storm losing strength. He sat outside the tea hut with his hands wrapped around warm water. The mountains were silent. The sky was pale. And for the first time in many months, Liang Wen noticed something simple. He could hear birds, not as background, as sound. The physician found him there and sat beside him without speaking. After a long silence, Liang Wen said, "My mind is still restless, but it is not as violent." The physician nodded. "That is refinement," he said. Liang Wen asked, "Why does it feel connected to my body?" The physician looked at him. "Because the mind does not float in the air," he said. "It rides the breath." Liang Wen listened. When your breath is shallow, the mind becomes sharp and frantic. When your breath is scattered, the mind becomes scattered. And when the breath becomes quiet, the mind begins to settle. Liang Wen felt something click. All his life, he had treated the mind as separate, something to control through force. But the physician spoke as if the mind were a river, and the breath was the current. The physician stood. "Come," he said. They walked along a mountain path together, not quickly, not slowly, naturally. As they walked, the physician said, "This is how memory returns after 35, not by forcing recall, not by training harder, but by restoring rhythm. Your mind forgets because your life has no rhythm," the physician said. "Too much tension, too much interruption, too much unfinished." Liang Wen asked, "What rhythm?" The physician held up 3 fingers. "Sleep, breath, one thread." Liang Wen frowned. "That sounds too simple." The physician nodded. "Truth is simple." Then he said, "Your memory is not stored only in the head. It is stored in the whole system. When the body is tense, the mind cannot record cleanly. When the body is exhausted, the mind cannot retrieve cleanly. When the body is always rushing, the mind cannot absorb." They stopped near a stream. The physician pointed at the water. "You cannot see your reflection when the surface is disturbed." Liang Wen watched the water move. Then he watched it gather in a quiet pool. His face appeared clearly, and suddenly something strange happened. A memory from the capital returned. A name, a witness, a detail from a dispute. Not because he searched for it, because it surfaced on its own. Liang Wen's eyes widened. The physician watched him. "Do you see?" he asked. Liang Wen nodded slowly. The physician continued. "This is stillness within action. You do not escape responsibility. You stop carrying it like a hunted man. You walk, but the mind walks with you. You speak, but the mind is there. You read, but the mind is not rushing ahead." Liang Wen felt something unfamiliar rise. Not excitement, relief, because for the first time he could imagine a future where his mind did not decline, not because he became younger, but because he became aligned. On the seventh day, Liang Wen returned to the tea hut. He did not feel like a new man. He felt like an old man returning, not to age, to himself. He sat across from the physician and bowed. "I have remembered things," Liang Wen said. "Small things, names, details, words that had disappeared." The physician nodded. "And what did you do to make them return?" he asked. Liang Wen hesitated, then answered honestly, "Nothing." The physician's eyes softened. "Good," he said. Liang Wen frowned. "Good?" The physician poured tea. "You have spent your life believing you must force everything. Force achievement, force respect, force security. And now you are trying to force memory." He set the cup down. "But memory is not conquered. It is invited." Liang Wen sat very still. The physician continued. "This is why adults after 35 suffer. They are not weak. They are capable men trapped in a broken identity. An identity built on chasing status, chasing stability, chasing the next solution. And when the mind lives in chasing, it cannot settle. And when the mind cannot settle, it cannot hold." Liang Wen felt something heavy in his chest. Not sadness, recognition. Because the physician was describing his entire life. Even his success had been a form of running. Liang Wen whispered, "So, what must I become?" The physician looked at him. Then he said, "You do not become. You refine." Liang Wen listened. "You are not broken," the physician said. "You are scattered. And what is scattered can return." He leaned forward slightly. "This is what you must carry back. Not the man who tries harder, not the man who collects endlessly, but the man who stops chasing, the man who lives one thread at a time, the man who lets the mind settle before demanding it perform." Liang Wen lowered his eyes. He thought of his wife and son. He realized how many meals he had eaten without tasting, how many conversations he had survived without listening. He had believed this was maturity. Now he saw it was fragmentation. The physician stood. "Return to your life," he said, "but return differently. Do not seek to improve memory. Seek alignment." Liang Wen swallowed. "What if I forget again?" he asked. The physician smiled faintly. "Then you return again." Liang Wen froze, because in that simple sentence, he heard the law of cultivation. Failure is not defeat. Failure is returning. Liang Wen bowed one last time. Then he stepped onto the road back to the capital. Not motivated, not inspired, just quietly responsible. No longer chasing, no longer scattered. If you are over 35 and your memory feels weaker, do not panic. Do not shame yourself. And do not make the mistake Liang Wen made. Do not try to force your mind back into youth. That is not cultivation. That is fear. The sage's method is quieter. Memory does not return through pressure. It returns through alignment. When the mind is no longer pulled in 10 directions, it begins to hold again. Not because you became smarter, because you became present. And if you forget again, because you will, do not treat it as defeat. Treat it as the signal to return. Return to one thread. Return to rhythm. Return to stillness within action. This is the path after 35, not reinvention, refinement. And if you keep returning, the mind becomes steady again, like a pond that remembers the moon.